Closing arguments. Verdict. Trump hush money trial enters final stages. Prosecutors and defense lawyers will present their closing arguments this week in the historic trial of former U.S. President Donald Trump. After more than 4 weeks and nearly 20 witnesses, the hush money trial against former President Donald Trump is now in its final stages. Prosecutors and Trump's defense team will begin their closing arguments Tuesday morning in a New York courtroom that has been the scene of a series of heated exchanges and unforgettable moments since testimony began in late April. Jurors were then asked to deliberate and reach a verdict just months before the country went to the polls, which is expected to lead to a tight race between Republican President Trump and his Democratic rival, President Joe Biden, in November. President Trump has pleaded not guilty to 34 counts of falsifying business documents related to hush payments to adult film stars before the 2016 presidential election. Here's everything you need to know about the landmark case, the first criminal trial of a former U.S. president, and what's next. What's going on with Trump's hush money trial this week? Prosecutors and defense attorneys will have the last chance to address the jury in closing arguments that are expected to last much of Tuesday. The arguments serve as an hour-long summary of the important points each side wants to make before the jury begins deliberating. The defense team starts first, followed by the prosecution. What do both parties say? Throughout the trial, prosecutors attempted to block a plan to cover up bad press that could hurt President Trump's chances in the 2016 presidential election. I tried to claim that he had participated. They presented financial reports to the jury and questioned several witnesses, including Stormy Daniels, the adult film star whose alleged affair with Trump is at the center of the case. President Trump has denied any sexual contact. A key prosecution witness, former Trump attorney Michael Cohen, also testified that the former president was directly involved in the scheme and authorized the payments. The defense has tried to discredit witnesses, including portraying Cohen as a notorious liar. Cohen pleaded guilty in 2018 to paying hush money and lying to Congress. But this week, Trump's team doesn't have to prove anything or convince a jury of his innocence. To avoid a conviction, at least one of the 12 jurors must be convinced that prosecutors failed to prove Trump's guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, the standard in criminal cases that I have to let happen. The defense can also argue one last time that President Trump's main concern with the hush money was not winning the election, but protecting his family from sordid stories. What should the jury decide? The courtroom drama has dominated media coverage of this trial, but the case boils down to President Trump's $130,000 hush payment for Daniels. The question now comes down to whether she intentionally suppressed the allegations to prevent it from jeopardizing his candidacy for the White House in 2016. Jurors must decide not only whether President Trump arranged to falsify payment records, but also whether he did so to conceal another crime, in this case, unreported campaign contributions. Both findings would make the alleged crimes a felony under New York state law. In an interview with Al Jazeera at the start of the trial, Gregory Germain, a law professor at Syracuse University in upstate New York, summarized two key elements of the indictment. Crime. After both sides have presented their closing arguments, Judge Juan Melchon, who's overseeing the case, will give detailed instructions to the jury on the interpretation of the law and the evidence under consideration. This could happen as early as Wednesday. How does jury deliberation occur? The deliberations take place in secret, in rooms reserved for jurors, in an intentionally opaque process. During deliberations, jurors have access to all evidence and can ask questions of the judge, who consults with prosecutors and defense attorneys before deciding answers. There's no limit to the amount of time a jury can deliberate. The jury is considering 34 counts of falsifying business records, so the process will take time and a verdict may not be reached before the end of this week. To reach a verdict of guilty or not guilty, all 12 jurors must agree on the verdict, and the judge must accept the verdict. If the jury cannot reach a unanimous verdict, the jury will deadlock, and Marchand will declare a mistrial. Once the jury notifies the court that it has reached a verdict, Marchand will call the parties into the courtroom to hear the jury read the verdict. Marchand still needs to review the verdict and make a final decision. Either party can ask you to effectively set aside the jury's ruling. What happens if Trump is condemned? Still, it would probably be several weeks or months until he's doomed if Trump is condemned. As a first-time lawbreaker of a peaceful crime, the ex-president and the Republican Party's 2024 plausible presidential designee would probably be released on bond in the meantime. The maximum judgment for Trump's crime of falsifying business records is over to 4 times in captivity. But while captivity time is a possibility, experts said a fine exploration or community service are each far more likely options. Will a conviction affect Trump's election chances? That remains unclear. An ABC News/Ipsos bean from early May set up that an inviting chance of Trump sympathizers, 80%, said they would back the former chairman in November indeed if he's set up shamefaced of a felony. But 16% said they would review their support if he's set up shamefaced, while 4% said they would withdraw it, the bean showed. Another bean published last week by Quinnipiac University showed that 6% of Trump choosers said they would be less likely to bounce for Trump if he's condemned. 24% said they would be more likely to bounce for him, and 68% said it would not affect their choice. While the chance of choosers who said they would gutter Trump if he's condemned is low, it could nonetheless prove important in a neck-and-neck contest between Trump and Biden. Will a conviction Gomorrah Trump? The vast majority of his sympathizers say it would be no big deal. But in an extremely tight race, that 6% could cock the balance. Quinnipiac University polling critic Tim Malloy said.